black woman was told to give up her VIP seat for a white passenger. One phone call. Later, the crew was gone. What would you do if someone tried to take your seat just because they thought they were more important? On what started as a quiet, ordinary flight, Angela Bennett, with nothing but calm dignity and grace, turned a moment of blatant disrespect into a lesson the entire cabin would never forget. Angela, mother of one of the most powerful CEOs in America, took a small sip of sparkling water as she reflected on her journey. Years ago, she had worked double shifts, skipped meals, and sacrificed everything to give her son, Marcus Bennett, the best life she could. And now, reclining in first class, she knew every hardship had paid off. Marcus wasn't just successful. He was the head of Bennett Global, a tech empire known for innovation and integrity. And more than wealth or fame, Angela was proudest of his character, his heart. The trip was a gift from Marcus, a weekend in New York filled with laughter, fine dining, and conversations only a mother and son could share. Angela felt peace as she looked out the window. Everything was quiet, until it wasn't. A sharp click of designer heels broke the calm as Evelyn Stokes entered the cabin. Impeccably dressed, blonde hair perfect, she walked like she owned the plane. And in her mind, maybe she did. Angela didn't notice her at first. She was lost in thought, smiling softly at memories of Marcus as a boy. But Evelyn noticed her. More importantly, Evelyn noticed Angela was in seat 1A, the seat she always demanded. Behind Evelyn was Linda Harper, her assistant, trying to keep up and looking as uneasy as ever. Evelyn stopped at the front of the cabin, narrowed her eyes, and leaned toward Linda just loud enough to be overheard. "Tell me I'm seeing things. Why is someone in my seat?" Linda panicked, fumbled with her phone. I asked the airline to reserve 1A. This must be a mistake." What happened next would ripple through the airline industry, because Evelyn had no idea who Angela Bennett really was, or what one phone call from her would set in motion. In just minutes, a routine flight would turn into a national headline, and a woman who thought she was above everyone else would learn what true power really looks like. Evelyn drew a slow breath, her eyes narrowing like a blade as she locked onto Angela. To her, anyone who stood in her path wasn't just a bother, they were an offense to her expectations. This wasn't just about a seat, it was about control, image, and status. Born into a powerful Connecticut dynasty, Evelyn had spent her life floating on a cloud of inherited privilege. Her father, a real estate titan, taught her early, the world bows to those who act like it should. And Evelyn had mastered that lesson. She marched toward Angela's seat with an entitled confidence, her assistant Linda scurrying behind, visibly anxious. A few passengers exchanged glances, sensing the tension in the air. Evelyn ignored them. She stopped beside Angela, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear, pleasant in tone, but as cold as glass. "Excuse me, ma'am. I believe you're in my seat." Angela turned, startled only slightly. Her gaze was steady, calm, not a flicker of fear. Evelyn wasn't used to that. Angela smiled gently and said, "I don't believe there's any mistake. This seat is reserved and ticketed in my name." Evelyn tilted her head, eyes sharpening. She had assumed Angela would quietly move. That assumption crumbled fast. "I'm not sure you understand," she said, voice tightening. "I always sit here. I'm a platinum elite. Seat 1A is mine." Angela didn't blink. "I understand, but today, it's mine, and I won't be moving." The refusal cut deep. Evelyn's pride flared. She shot Linda a look that screamed, "Do something." Within seconds, Greg, the young flight attendant, appeared beside them, his polite smile strained. Evelyn pounced. "Why has my VIP seat been taken?" she snapped. "Do you have any idea who I am?" Greg kept his tone measured. "Miss Stokes, allow me to check the seating list." Evelyn crossed her arms, eyes locked on Angela like a dare, but Angela didn't flinch. She stayed quiet, confident, and that only fueled Evelyn's anger. Greg returned after a moment, his face apologetic. "Miss Stokes, the record confirms this seat was indeed reserved under Miss Bennett's name. It appears there was a booking error." Evelyn scoffed, loudly. Passengers nearby stiffened. "I've never heard of such incompetence," she snapped. "Do you realize how much money I spend flying with this airline? I expect her to vacate that seat immediately." The cabin went still. Every head turned. Every eye was now watching. Angela sat motionless, but the look in her eyes had shifted. Steely, clear. She wouldn't be pushed. Evelyn, livid, turned to Greg. "Get me the supervisor, now, and remember who you're dealing with." Angela looked out the window for a moment. She knew what this was. It wasn't about flight logistics. It was a power play, and she'd faced harder battles her whole life. The quiet murmur among passengers was growing. Evelyn's standoff wasn't going unnoticed. Then Evelyn spoke again, her voice coated in sugar but sharp underneath. "Perhaps you're unfamiliar with the standards of first class. There are expectations, unspoken rules for those who truly understand luxury." She paused, glancing deliberately at Angela's outfit, then gave a condescending smile. Angela turned slowly, meeting her gaze with quiet strength. "I understand exactly what you're implying, Ms. Stokes," she said, voice calm but unwavering. "But as I've stated, this seat was reserved for me, and I assure you, I know the rules just fine." What Evelyn didn't realize was that Angela wasn't just defending a seat. She was about to teach everyone on that plane what real class looks like. Evelyn's polished smile froze midair. She wasn't used to resistance, especially not like this. Most people yielded before she even finished speaking, but Angela's calm, steady presence was a curveball she hadn't expected. With a slight arch of her brow, Evelyn adjusted her tone. "Oh, no offense," she said sweetly, "but perhaps you'd be more comfortable in a different seat, one where you fit in better." Her words were soft, but the message hit hard, a subtle but unmistakable jab. Angela knew exactly what she meant. Angela exhaled slowly, her composure unwavering. "I appreciate your concern," she replied, her voice even and warm, "but I'm perfectly comfortable right where I am. If there's an issue, I'm sure the crew can help you find another seat." The smile vanished from Evelyn's face. She was done pretending. This wasn't just defiance. It was a direct hit to her pride. Turning sharply to Greg, her tone snapped like ice. "Did you hear what I said? Handle this, now. I'm Platinum Elite. This airline has never failed me, and it won't start today." Greg, clearly uneasy, turned to Angela with a look that betrayed his bias. "Miss Bennett," he began cautiously, "perhaps it would be best if you switched seats. We can ensure you remain in first class." Angela met his eyes without hesitation. Her expression sharpened. For the first time, her voice lost its softness. "I don't think you understand. I have no obligation to move because someone else thinks they deserve this seat more. I expect this airline to treat all passengers with equal respect." Greg shifted uncomfortably but pushed forward. "Sometimes there are unique situations that require flexibility." Angela raised her hand gently, stopping him mid-sentence. Her eyes burned with quiet certainty. "This isn't a unique situation. It's simply Miss Stokes insisting I be removed because I don't meet her personal expectations, and I won't accept that." The cabin grew still. A few passengers glanced at one another, their expressions sympathetic but silent. Everyone could feel it. This wasn't just about seat 1A anymore. Evelyn clenched her jaw. She wasn't used to being outmaneuvered. "If you insist on being difficult," she hissed, "I'll have the senior manager handle this. You might want to rethink your attitude." Angela remained serene, her voice like silk wrapped around steel. "You're welcome to do that, Miss Stokes, but I trust that any manager who values fairness will support the seat assignment as it stands." For the first time, Evelyn hesitated. The calm defiance in Angela's voice wasn't just confidence, it was unshakable self-respect, and it rattled her. A heavy quiet settled over the cabin like a curtain. Evelyn stood rigid, her face unreadable. For once, her status didn't grant her instant victory. Angela, still seated, remained the picture of grace, but deep down, she knew the real storm was only beginning. Greg, visibly shaken, turned on his heel and walked briskly down the aisle. Moments later, firm footsteps echoed back toward them. A woman in a supervisor's uniform appeared, every line of her face marked by professionalism and pressure. Deborah Lane, known for keeping flights smooth and reputations intact, but when she saw Evelyn, a shadow of hesitation crossed her features. She knew this customer, and she knew the stakes. "Miss Stokes," Deborah said gently, trying to keep her tone neutral. "I'm Deborah Lane, flight supervisor. I apologize for the confusion." Evelyn didn't even turn toward her. Her arms crossed, her eyes locked on Angela like a spotlight. "Deborah, let's not complicate this. I always sit in 1A, and yet here we are." Deborah forced a smile and turned to Angela. "Miss Bennett, I understand this isn't ideal, but in light of Miss Stokes's frequent flyer status, we'd appreciate your cooperation in relocating. We can guarantee you an equally comfortable seat." Angela looked up, her voice measured and clear. "Deborah, with all due respect, this isn't about who flies more often. I purchased this seat, I am sitting in it, and I have every right to remain here." Deborah stood in silence, caught between policy, pressure, and principle. Evelyn's stare bore into her, but Angela's quiet strength left no room for compromise. The next move would decide everything. Deborah tried to hold firm, but her voice betrayed the strain. "Miss Bennett, please understand, we sometimes need cooperation to ensure a smooth flight for everyone." Angela tilted her head, her expression calm but piercing. "Is that what this is really about, Deborah?" Evelyn cut in before she could respond, her tone sharp with contempt. "Let's not pretend this isn't about cooperation. It's about who belongs in first class." Her words hit like ice water. Glances from nearby passengers drifted toward Angela, curious, uncertain, some sympathetic, most silent. The cold air around her wasn't just from the AC. Angela adjusted her scarf, letting a quiet fire spark in her eyes. "Oh, I understand you perfectly, Miss Stokes," she said, steady and unwavering. "And that's why I'm staying right here. Because real first class isn't about appearances. It's about how you treat others." The words cut through the cabin like a clear bell. Evelyn's mask of civility cracked. "Oh, please," she scoffed. "You really think you're in a position to teach me about behavior? How quaint." Deborah stepped in again, now more pleading than professional. "Miss Bennett, please, just consider taking another seat. We don't want this to escalate." Angela met her gaze, unshaken. "Deborah, I respect your position, but ask yourself, if I move now, what message does that send? That this treatment is acceptable for someone like me?" Deborah faltered, a faint blush rising in her cheeks. Angela's words rang with truth. Evelyn, meanwhile, wasn't finished. She leaned in slightly, her voice dripping with condescension. "I'm honestly shocked this airline allows just anyone to sit in 1A these days. Standards really have slipped." A hush fell over the cabin. Even the usual rustle of first-class comfort went still. All eyes turned to Angela. Her hand tensed, her heart pounded, but her voice remained composed. "Miss Stokes," she said firmly, "you're the one confused about standards, and I will not be made small today." Evelyn's lips curled in contempt, as if convinced victory was within reach. Deborah took a small step back, unwilling to engage further. Around them, passengers watched Angela with silent judgment, many mistaking her resistance for disruption. In that moment, Angela realized this was no longer just about her seat. This was about something much bigger, about every person who had ever been quietly pushed aside. Without a word, she reached into her handbag, pulled out her phone, and tapped a name she knew by heart: Marcus Bennett. High above New York, in a sleek glass boardroom, Marcus Bennett stood at the helm of a billion-dollar company. In the middle of a major strategy session, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and immediately stopped talking. His mother never called him during work hours. "Excuse me," he said, stepping into his private office with growing concern. "Mom, what's wrong?" Angela's voice came through, calm but strained with anger. "Marcus, I'm on a flight and something's happening. A woman named Evelyn Stokes demanded I give up my seat. The crew is pressuring me to move. It's humiliating." Marcus's heart dropped. His voice turned cold and steady. "They did what?" In a second, he sat down, cleared the table, and focused on only one thing: protecting his mother. He scrolled through his phone and dialed a direct number. Edward Harris, CEO of one of America's top airlines and a longtime partner of Bennett Global. After 2 rings, Edward answered cheerfully. "Marcus, what a surprise. What's up?" Marcus didn't return the greeting. His tone was measured but ice cold. "Edward, I'm calling because your crew just sided with a woman harassing my mother. She was asked to give up her seat in first class. This is unacceptable." The line fell quiet, and the real consequences were only beginning. Marcus rarely acted out of emotion, unless it involved his values, and nothing mattered more to him than family. "Marcus, I'm truly sorry," Edward said, his voice suddenly tight. "This is not how we do things. I'll handle it personally." "I'm not asking for an apology," Marcus replied, each word cold and precise. "I want accountability. This isn't just about my mother. It's about basic respect and your brand's values." "You have my word," Edward said, voice serious now. There was no hesitation. Marcus ended the call and stared out his window, his jaw set. This wouldn't be swept under the rug. He would make sure of that. Back on the plane, Angela quietly slipped her phone into her bag. She didn't know what her son would do, but she trusted him. Evelyn was still standing nearby, trying to hold on to her smug confidence, but something in the air had shifted. Within minutes, the tension in first class shattered. The cabin door swung open. Rapid, heavy footsteps followed. 2 sharply dressed men in black suits entered with purpose. Airline badges shimmered on their jackets. Their eyes locked on the front row. The older man, his voice crisp and commanding, stepped forward. "I'm Richard Thompson, senior management with the airline," he said, his voice echoing in the stunned silence. "Deborah Lane, Greg Foster, please come with me immediately." He didn't raise his voice, but his words hit like a hammer. Deborah and Greg froze. They exchanged pale glances. No one moved. "We've received a report from the highest level," Thompson continued. "It appears there's been a serious failure in how one of our passengers was treated. You'll explain yourselves now." Deborah stepped forward, trying to sound composed. "Sir, we were just trying to resolve a seating issue," Greg added quickly. "Ms. Stokes is a top-tier client, so we—" Thompson cut him off with a glare. "So disrespecting another customer is acceptable? Is that what you're saying?" They both fell silent. The cabin, now utterly still, felt like a courtroom. Thompson leaned in, his voice lower but even more forceful. "Let me make this very clear. This airline does not tolerate discrimination against anyone. Your conduct today has violated our principles." Suddenly, Evelyn raised her voice, indignant. "Mr. Thompson, this is all a misunderstanding. I simply requested—" But Thompson turned, his stare razor-sharp. "Miss Stokes, with respect, this is no longer your concern. This is now between the airline and our staff." The fury on Evelyn's face said everything, but she remained silent. Angela sat still, composed but alert. She knew it the moment Marcus placed that call. everything had changed. Thompson faced Deborah and Greg again. Effective immediately, both of you are suspended from duty. There will be a full investigation. But for now, gather your belongings. You're leaving this flight. Deborah trembled. Sir, please. This was never our intention. No exceptions, Thompson said firmly. Security is waiting outside. Please cooperate. Two uniformed officers stepped forward. Deborah and Greg didn't move at first, but the reality hit hard. They had just lost everything over a moment of poor judgment. Passengers watched in silence as the two were led away. For the first time since boarding, Angela felt the weight lift. She hadn't spoken a word, but justice had spoken for her. Thompson turned back toward her, his tone changing. He gave a respectful bow and said quietly, Miss Bennett, we sincerely apologize. On behalf of the airline. Miss Bennett, on behalf of the airline, I sincerely apologize for everything you've endured today, Thompson said, his voice steady but respectful. We hope you can accept our deepest regret for this situation. Angela nodded silently, but she knew this wasn't just an apology, it was a shift, a turning point, a message, loud and clear. This kind of treatment would no longer be ignored or excused. The cabin door snapped shut behind Deborah and Greg, the sound echoing like the end of an era. Evelyn stood frozen, color draining from her face, her authority crumbling in real time. And then she snapped. Her voice, sharp and shrill, cut through the silence. You think this is over? You think humiliating me will come without consequences? You have no idea who you've messed with. Passengers flinched as her rant escalated. Families instinctively pulled closer. Evelyn stormed toward Angela, her heels striking the floor like warning shots. I don't care who you are, she spat, rage twisting her face. You and this pathetic airline will pay for this. Angela looked up. Her heart raced, but her voice was calm. Miss Stokes, I understand you're upset, but you've crossed a line. Evelyn sneered, eyes wild. I crossed the line? You have the nerve to say that to me? The tension in the cabin turned electric. Fear rippled through the rows. Evelyn was unraveling. Evelyn, please! Linda finally stepped forward, voice trembling. Let's stop this. Not like this. But Evelyn shoved her aside. Stay out of it, Linda. If you're too weak to stand by me, then move. She turned back to Angela, her voice now nearly a scream. This is your last chance. I will sue you. I'll bury this airline. I'll ruin you. A chorus of voices from the back began calling for help. Two flight attendants rushed forward, calm but firm. Ms. Stokes, we need you to sit down and calm yourself. This behavior cannot continue. I'm the one being attacked, Evelyn shouted, and then shoved one of them. Gasps rippled through the cabin. One attendant picked up the intercom. Security to the front, immediately. Angela stayed seated, still, composed, watching a woman destroy her own image, piece by piece. Minutes later, the door opened again. Two security officers entered the cabin, silent and purposeful. Ma'am, one said, you need to come with us. Please leave the aircraft. Evelyn's voice cracked as she shrieked, What? You're kicking me off? Do you even know who I am? The officers didn't blink. Ms. Stokes, we don't want to use force. Please step off the plane now. She tried to resist, raging, flailing, threatening, but it was over. You'll regret this, she howled as they escorted her down the aisle. All of you, I'll sue you all. But her voice now carried no power, only desperation. Angela remained still, her eyes fixed forward. What had begun as humiliation ended as a powerful stand, and everyone on that plane had witnessed the truth. Dignity doesn't scream, it doesn't shove, it doesn't demand privilege, it stands quietly, it holds the line. And that's exactly what Angela did. William Harris stepped forward, his gaze cold and unwavering. Ms. Evelyn Stokes, he said firmly, I'm William Harris, Director of Loyalty Programs. Effective immediately, your Platinum Elite status is revoked for violating our safety and conduct policies during this flight." The cabin froze. Gasps and wide eyes swept through first class. No one had expected it to go this far. Angela, still seated, glanced calmly at Evelyn, her expression measured, even empathetic. She understood. Evelyn had pushed herself beyond any return. Evelyn tore away from the guard's grip, eyes wide with disbelief. "You can't do this," she pleaded. "I've flown with this airline for years. You know who I am." William didn't blink. "You made your identity clear, Miss Stokes, but today your behavior defined you, and our values will not be compromised, not for anyone." The words hit harder than any insult. Evelyn stood frozen, for once truly speechless, her pride shredded in front of the very people she once expected to obey her. And then she erupted. "You'll regret this," she screamed. "I'll sue until this company collapses." William gave a subtle nod to security. "Please escort Miss Stokes off the aircraft. We will not delay departure any longer." The guards moved swiftly. Evelyn's protests turned into shouts, then into desperate, hollow threats. "This is all your fault, Angela Bennett. You'll pay for this." Angela didn't flinch. She didn't even look at her. She simply sat, composed and centered, with dignity untouched. It was never about revenge. It was about justice. And now everyone on board had seen it carried out. The door closed behind Evelyn with a cold, final click. A chapter ended. The silence that followed felt heavy until William addressed the passengers again. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "on behalf of the airline, I sincerely apologize for the disruption you've witnessed. We remain fully committed to the safety, dignity, and comfort of every traveler. Thank you for your understanding." Soft murmurs of agreement followed, a few scattered claps. The tension eased. Heads turned, this time toward Angela, not with pity, but with deep respect. Angela remained silent, but inside she felt something lift, a quiet pride, a soft peace. She thought of Marcus and smiled. His call had changed the course of this flight and sent a message far beyond its cabin walls. No one gets to diminish you, no matter how powerful they think they are. As the engines rumbled to life and the plane readied for takeoff, Angela looked out the window. The sun spilled amber light across the tarmac, fading into a calm, glowing horizon. In that glow, she felt it. The storm had passed. The fight was bigger than her, but today she had stood in its center and held her ground. And as the aircraft lifted into the sky, high above the noise and injustice she left behind, every passenger around her quietly knew she hadn't just kept her seat. She had redefined what it meant to truly deserve one. The soft glow of the sunset bathed Angela's face as she looked out the window, the fading horizon reflecting in her calm, thoughtful eyes. In her mind, Marcus appeared clearer than ever. Her son, her pride. The boy she'd raised on unwavering lessons about respect, dignity, and fairness had grown into a man who didn't just carry those values, he lived by them. She remembered the quiet nights after long shifts, sitting beside young Marcus, telling him that worth isn't defined by wealth, race, or privilege, but by how we treat others. Today, he proved he had listened. He hadn't used power to intimidate. He'd made one calm, decisive phone call that reminded the world, dignity is not optional. The flight attendant's voice over the speaker gently pulled her back. "We've reached cruising altitude. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight. On behalf of the airline, we again apologize for the earlier incident." Angela took a slow sip of water, feeling the last traces of tension melt away. A sense of gratitude washed over her, not just for Marcus, but for every moment in life that had brought them to this one. A flight attendant approached quietly. "Miss Bennett, on behalf of the entire crew, we deeply regret what happened. Thank you for your strength and grace." Angela offered a soft nod. "Thank you. I only hope no one else ever has to go through something like that." As the plane soared above the clouds, the warmth of the fading sun filled the cabin. Angela sat in peace. The storm was over, and dignity had prevailed. Back on the ground, in a towering office overlooking the New York skyline, Marcus Bennett sat alone, gazing out at the darkening city lights. He wasn't celebrating. He was reflecting. His mother's experience, he knew, wasn't rare. It was a symptom of something far more broken. The next morning, he walked into the headquarters of the airline, not just as a business partner, but as someone who had witnessed the core of the problem. The room grew tense as he entered. At the head of the table sat Edward Harris, the CEO, surrounded by senior executives. Everyone knew this meeting would set a precedent. Marcus stood, his voice firm and steady. "I'm here not as a shareholder, but as a customer. What happened to my mother wasn't just a mistake, it was the result of a cultural failure inside your organization." Edward started to respond, but Marcus lifted a hand, stopping him. "With all due respect, I don't want words. I want action. If we value fairness and ethics, we must reflect those values across every level, from flight crew to corporate boardrooms." An executive hesitated. "Mr. Bennett, is it even feasible to change an entire system so quickly?" Marcus looked him in the eye. "Feasibility is a matter of will. If this company truly believes in what it claims, then this change is not optional." Silence gripped the room. Finally, Edward spoke. "You're right. Effective today, we will create a task force to examine every part of our structure: training, service, leadership. We will rebuild this airline's culture from the inside out." Marcus gave a single nod, the edge in his voice softening. "Then let's begin, now." And so, the ripples from one seat, one voice, and one act of courage began to spread, turning a quiet act of resistance into the beginning of a powerful transformation. Marcus rose once more, scanning the room of executives with a voice firm and resolute. "Let me be clear, this isn't about pleasing me. It's about ensuring that no passenger, regardless of who they are, ever endures what my mother did. This is about dignity, period." Edward Harris nodded solemnly. The weight of responsibility now rested fully on his shoulders. "You have my word, Marcus. We will act, starting today. And we will make this reform public." Marcus gave a subtle nod and sat back down. He knew this was only the beginning. Real change would require more than statements. It would demand consistency, courage, and a clear commitment to respecting every passenger. Meanwhile, aboard that same plane, Angela still gazed peacefully out the window. She didn't yet know what her son had set in motion, but she trusted him. She always had. And somehow, she sensed that the values she'd instilled in Marcus, the ones she'd held sacred all her life, had taken root. Within days, the airline issued a public statement across all media platforms. For the first time in company history, CEO Edward Harris appeared live on national television, his demeanor composed but humble. Standing beside him was Marcus Bennett, the man who had transformed a personal injustice into a national reckoning. Edward faced the cameras. "Recently, our airline experienced an unacceptable incident. I take full responsibility and offer my sincerest apologies to Ms. Angela Bennett and to anyone affected. But we are not stopping at apologies. We are taking action." He paused, then continued, unwavering. "Effective immediately, we are launching a full-scale reform of our management, training programs, and customer service culture. Every employee will undergo retraining, with a core focus on ethics, equity, and respect. No passenger will ever be dismissed or devalued based on background or status again. Then Marcus stepped forward, composed and commanding. "Today, I speak not just as a CEO, but as the son of a woman who was denied basic respect. What happened to my mother must never happen to anyone." He paused, letting his words settle in the silence. From this moment forward, Bennett Global will only partner with organizations that uphold fairness and dignity. We will not tolerate discrimination anywhere in our network. Respect is not optional. It is the foundation of every partnership we honor. His closing words echoed powerfully. Let my mother's story serve as a reminder. When you witness injustice, silence is not an option. Speak, act, stand. The press conference went viral within hours. Across newsrooms, talk shows, and social media, Angela's quiet courage and Marcus's leadership sparked a wave of support. Tens of thousands shared their story, praising it as a symbol of resilience and dignity in the face of prejudice. Prominent voices and civil rights organizations echoed Marcus's call, endorsing the airline's reform efforts and vowing to hold others to the same standard. Angela, once just another passenger on a flight, became a living emblem of grace under pressure and the strength to say no more. As for Evelyn Stokes, the once powerful figure who had wielded entitlement like a weapon, her name now trended for all the wrong reasons. Her behavior became public knowledge, widely condemned across headlines and digital feeds. Former admirers distanced themselves. Respect cannot be bought, and Evelyn learned, too late, that power without humility collapses quickly. Angela, meanwhile, returned quietly to her life. She didn't seek attention. She didn't need applause. What mattered most had already been affirmed, that self-worth cannot be stripped away, and respect must never be conditional. And Marcus knew this was just the first step. A step toward a world where justice isn't something you have to demand, but something you can expect. In his heart, he carried the image of his mother, strong, composed, dignified, guiding him forward like a steady light. Whatever lay ahead, he was ready, because she had raised him to be ready. The last light of dusk bathed JFK Airport in a warm amber glow as Angela's flight touched down, as if the day itself had chosen to soften the weight of what had passed. When she stepped off the plane, the first thing she saw was Marcus, standing tall, composed, but with eyes filled with warmth. Angela's heart swelled as Marcus wrapped her in a deep embrace, the kind that said everything without needing words. In that moment, every trace of exhaustion vanished. Her voice trembled with emotion. "Marcus, thank you. I'm so proud of what you did." He took a gentle step back, placing a hand on her shoulder, eyes steady and full of respect. "No, Mom, I'm the one who should thank you. Everything I did today came from what you taught me. You showed me that dignity and justice matter more than anything." Angela smiled softly, touched by his words. "I know you could have solved this with power and pressure, but you chose the harder path, the right one. Fairness, compassion, responsibility." Marcus nodded. "You always told me that a person's worth isn't in what they have, but in what they're willing to stand for. I've carried that with me every day." They stood for a moment, hand in hand, in quiet connection, the bond of a mother and son built on a lifetime of shared values. Across the airport, hidden behind tinted windows, Evelyn Stokes sat alone in her luxury car. Her face, once full of pride, now stared blankly into the distance. She had lost more than status. She had lost the respect of the world around her. And for the first time, she understood, power without compassion is nothing at all. But Angela no longer gave her a second thought. What mattered was the peace she felt in her soul, and the future she saw walking beside her. As they moved through the terminal, their shadows stretched across the polished floor, long and steady in the fading light. Angela spoke quietly, her voice calm but firm. "Marcus, what you did today, it's just the beginning. You've opened the door for something bigger. and I believe others will follow. Marcus looked at her, eyes lit with responsibility and fire. I hope so, Mom, because change doesn't come from one person. It takes all of us. We each have a role to play. Angela's smile deepened, her trust in him shining through. We can all help change the world. We just have to be brave enough to try. Marcus nodded with quiet resolve. Bennett Global will continue to lead that change, and I promise, I will keep using my voice to fight for a better, fairer world. They walked on, the sun dipping below the horizon, but the light in their hearts only growing brighter. They knew there would be more challenges ahead, but they also knew something greater. As long as people keep standing up for what's right, hope never fades. And as Angela and Marcus moved toward the gate and into the future, their journey left behind more than a news headline. It left behind a truth, one that lingers in the heart, that dignity matters, that justice requires courage, and that every single one of us holds the power to make the world a more respectful, more human place. If this story moved you and you believe in the power of standing up for what's right, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join us for more stories that inspire, challenge, and uplift. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next journey.